SCP-5007. SCP-5007-S1 is to be contained in Cell 5007-A, a 20 by 60 meter cylindrical containment chamber within Site-40R. Cell 5007-A is constructed of reinforced concrete and ballistic glass 25 cm thick. No nutrition or outside substances may be introduced into Cell 5007-A outside of testing. Site-40R has been constructed 200 meters from SCP-5007-A for the purpose of monitoring the site for the emergence of SCP-5000 instances from SCP-5007-B. Site-40R is to be equipped with aerial and aquatic rescue equipment alongside meteorological instruments. All parts of Site-40R are to be covered in netting to protect staff from instances of SCP-5007. Upon confirmation of an instance of SCP-5007 emerging from SCP-5007-B, staff are to use meteorological data and predictive software to track the instance and predict where it will make landfall. Once a destination has been established, the area is to be evacuated and civilians are instructed to remain indoors with the pretense of a gas leak, storms, or a viral outbreak. Aerial and seaborne traffic is to be rerouted so that they may not approach closer than 10 kilometers from the instance's projected flight path. No aircraft or watercraft are to be permitted within 10 kilometers from Site-40R or SCP-5007-A and shall be rerouted upon approach. In the event of a failed evacuation procedure, teams dispatched from Site-40R are to make efforts to minimize the number of abductions via small arms fire and hiding of civilians. All witnesses of these events are to be administered Class B amnestics by the abductions, and these abductions are to be explained by drowning, non-anomalous abduction or transi. Any individuals abducted by SCP-5007 are to be considered lost and may be terminated at staff discretion. Witness statements issued prior to Foundation involvement are to be discredited via SCP plants within UFO conspiracy groups and organizations, fabrication of death certificates, and amnestics. Any personnel conducting research in SCP-5000 must not remain still for longer than 40 minutes, and any items left on its surface for longer than 2 hours are to be considered lost. All personnel conducting any research on SCP-5007-A are to be fitted with fast retrieval harnesses fitted to an offshore vessel. In the event of an attack by SCP-5007, the vessel is to winch the staff to the vessel and return to Site-40R until it is deemed safe to return. No research team may be conducted without the presence of a fire team, and under no circumstances or any staff to enter SCP-5007-B. No attempt to rescue individuals abducted by SCP-5007, shipwreck survivors, or plane crash survivors deposited into SCP-5000-A is to be made, though remote termination is permitted with Level 3 oversight. Following incident SCP-5007-40R-R12, SCP-5007-B is not to be covered or shielded under any circumstances. SCP-5007 is a collective designation of malicious, partially humanoid entities that maintain a territory across the Bass Strait, an area of ocean that divides Tasmania and the Australian mainland, and are responsible for restraining disappearances within this range. The morphology of SCP-5000 often varies. Universally, SCP-5007 are composed of groups between 2 and 9 human bodies fused together amidst large clusters of black tentacles. These tentacles appear to have lengths varying between approximately 2 and 70 meters, and appear to be fused to the skin wherever they touch directly. Of note are the stomachs of SCP-5007, which are grossly distorted and swollen into size reaching approximately 15 to 20 meters in diameter. SCP-5007 instances are capable of passive flight, attaining buoyancy through enormous quantities of gas produced by their stomachs. Across the surface of these organs, most specimens have developed clusters of simple eyes and bioluminescent organs. Many of their humanoid components appear to have been removed and reattached seemingly at random points. Encounters with SCP-5007 have been known since at least 1858, with the first successful visual recordings accomplished in late 1982 when an instance of SCP-5000 was recorded abducting 5 children from a Tasmanian beach. Human segments of SCP-5007 appear to remain independent of one another, and their behavior suggests a great deal of discomfort. Vocalizations are incoherent and rarely understandable, typically comprised of gasps, moans, and whispers, though entities have been reported to implore other individuals to approach them when encountered. Ineffectual attempts at self-harm or destruction of these stoned organs have been reported as well. SCP-5007 are known to abduct human beings. Each reported encounter has followed a similar pattern. Victims are universally alone or otherwise unsupervised. Of note is that victims never require visual aids such as glasses. SCP-5007 may appear in any weather condition, time of day, time or year. They appear to be able to navigate all weather with minimal or difficulty regardless of clear or hostile skies. All encounters have occurred in the Bass Strait, with a major preference for smaller coastal towns or small boats. SCP-5007 will move towards the shore, stalking the intended victim for a short period before lowering numerous tentacles and appendages to physically grab the individual. A single instance may abduct many people at once. For instance, successfully grabbing 8 men from the decks of a commercial fishing boat within 15 seconds of one another. Once the victims are securely captured, SCP-5007 instances will return to the open water at great speed, and often in excess of 320 km per hour. Tracking instances of SCP-5007 has shown that they inhabit a remote reef within the Bass Strait, resting and depositing abductees there. Initial investigations that led to the discovery of SCP-5007 were disparate investigations into the region, and early theories did not connect so many visual abductions across a wide area across such a wide time period. Theories included anomalous groups of persons, one or more, hostile aerial entities inhabiting the stratosphere, phenomena associated with unidentified flying objects, subterranean anomalies, time torts, and unusual weather patterns. However, after the disappearance of Agent Taberner's 3 young children and wife from a beach in the broad daylight in 1980, further research into the region was prioritized, and it was soon discovered that reports of UFOs and lights in the sky had coincided with many disappearances in the immediate region. Patterns emerged as this was kept at the forefront of further research. The Foundation immediately began a focus on simply locating the 4 lost Taberner family members. The search rapidly opened into a large-scale investigation into unexplained disappearances along these similar patterns on the Victorian coast and later the Tasmanian coast and the local islands. Initial assumptions had that they had been taken by a group of interest or unknown local terrestrial element were soon found to be incorrect. Within 3 weeks, it was determined that these patterns were common across the entirety of the Bass Strait's coastal regions. Foundation teams successfully interviewed over 120 witnesses, next of kin, and police groups to establish patterns. They soon discovered the vast majority of cases there were no witnesses, and the abductions were both preceded and followed by reports of lights in the sky and one or more concrete signs of unidentified flying objects described as looking-like balloons. On May 23, 1982, emergency services call centers received a large number of UFO sightings across the coast of Norman Bay, Victoria. Foundation plans within call centers and emergency organizations alerted local sites, and task force operatives were dispatched to investigate. Upon the arrival of the appearance and existence of what are now documented as SCP-5007. After a brief evacuation and encounter with the entity, it was successfully captured and transported to Site 40 for containment. Discovery of SCP-5007 prompted the subsequent construction of Site 40R and designation of the entity as Site SCP-5007-S1. During the initial investigation into SCP-5007, prior to the containment of SCP-5007-S1, the Foundation conducted numerous interviews with relatives of suspected victims of SCP-5000 in an effort to determine a pattern for disappearances. Among those interviewed was Alan Stewart, who was present during the disappearance of former Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt. Due to the high-profile nature of his disappearance, a doctor posed as a reporter to write an article about disappearance. The doctor interviewed Alan about what happened that day, collecting his first-hand accounts of rumors. Alan explained that he and his friend Harold had been on swimming after being disappointed about missing a yacht, while the others stayed ashore because the water looked rough. Both of them were experienced swimmers, but Stewart felt a strong undertow once they got waist deep. He called out to Harold's suggestion that they stay in the shallows, but Harold swam further away. Stewart noticed Harold starting to look uncertain and called him back in, but Harold said something about balloons near cliffs, claiming that there were people inside them, and swam off to look. Moments later, the current swept Harold away fast, like a leaf in the tide. Stewart shaked and hesitated to share the rest, but admitted that just before Harold disappeared, he saw his friend screaming, trying to swim back, then being lifted into the air by something reaching down from the clouds. Stewart's companion Marty later dismissed this as a trick of the light, but Stewart insisted that he really saw it. The interview ends with the doctor apologizing for dredging it up, and in closing statement notes, Stewart is the only known eyewitness of the abduction so far. Does the sighting happen 18 years ago? Unless it's art an option, is Stewart likely need to be discredited if he talks publicly about this. For those of you who don't know, Harold Holt actually was a real person. He was the Prime Minister of Australia in real life. And he did also indeed go missing in a lake one day, for some reason. And they never bothered to even search for him, which I'm not really too sure as to why. But this is based off real events, obviously. Is it? Following extensive interviews with witnesses, compiling a database of likely victims, and the containment of SCP-5007-1-S1, it was determined that there must be at least 16 instances of SCP-5007 as yet unaccounted for. As a result of this information, the search for SCP-5007's origin point was made a top priority. Foundation personnel were to closely monitor coastlines and the waters of Bass Strait, and were keeping various marine survey teams equipped with Class B aquatic research vessels on standby to track any discovered instances of SCP-5000 to its point of origin. At 3:21 a.m., the May 19, 1985 Foundation survey teams operating at Site 40 reported sighting of a large SCP-5007 specimen heading towards the coastal town of Cotunda, Victoria, in the Bass Strait. Marine Survey Team 40 Alpha was sent to track the specimen in an effort to determine its point of origin. The following video was taken from a sergeant's body camera of the resultant events. On May 19, 1985, Marine Survey Team 40 Alpha engaged in a reconnaissance operation of SCP-5007. The entity was initially sighted at an estimated distance of 75 meters, suspended above a private fishing vessel. Recorded dimensions placed it at approximately 23 meters in diameter, composed of 7 humanoid figures fused into a roughly spherical formation. Illumination consistent with bioluminescent phenomena was observed across its surface. 5 humanoid components could not be identified. However, there were 2 later confirmed, only named as Mark and Hope, a married couple who reported missing during a honeymoon voyage in 1965. Personal reactions varied. One of the corporals involved noted that the similarity to a UFO aside the entities during luminescence, while the other corporal exhibited acute distress upon closer visual confirmation of the fused humanoids, describing their appearance as clay crushed together, with a tentacle growing into her mouth. Sergeant Price reestablished command focus, instructing personnel to disregard the humanoid features as non-human components of the specimen. The vessel below registered as licensed to chill under the name Gregory Falwell, containing 6 civilian occupants designated abductees 1 through 6. Abductee 1 initially observed SCP-5000, voicing alarm. Remaining abductees were engaged in casual conversation and food preparation within the cabin until the entity was descended. At this time, SCP-5007 partially lowered itself, tentacular appendages trailing into surrounding water, and oriented the majority of the fused humanoid faces towards Abductee 1. Vocalization was recorded. It reads, "I see you. Who will help me see?" Immediately following this statement, Abductee 1 attempted to retreat into the cabin but was seized by tentacle and elevated into the air. Civilian panic ensued. Abductee 5 attempted to intervene but was restrained by Abductees 2 and 4. SCP-5007 located the cabin door by tactile search, manipulating the handle with an appendage terminating in multiple human hands. Entry was forced, resulting in abduction of Abductee 2. Remaining occupants attempted resistance with available objects but were captured sequentially by the entity. 40 Alpha personnel recorded the event without intervention. The sergeant cited mission priority and the risk of jeopardizing ongoing observation as justification for non-engagement. One of the corporals expressed reluctance, observing violent convulsions among the humanoid components of SCP-5007, including the attempted self-strangulation and emesis of unidentified orange substance. The entity subsequently approached 40 Alpha's vessel, probing the hole and attempting to breach the entry hatch. Recorded force was insufficient to compromise the hatch, which was rated for resistance up to 5 tons. During this period, multiple crew members noted the abnormal ocular structures of the specimen, described as beach ball sized. SCP-5007 disengaged after several minutes, exhibiting a tremor-like movement before ascending and departing southwest. A harpoon tracker was successfully affixed onto one of its tentacles, permitting 40 Alpha to follow the entity for a duration of 4 hours and 19 minutes. The pursuit led to a large reef mass containing multiple shipwrecks. Visual confirmation documented the presence of 13 additional SCP-5007 instances anchored to the reef by tentacles, as well as numerous SCP-4159 entities emerging in surrounding waters. SCP-5007 deposited the abducted civilians onto the reef surface, where they were rapidly assaulted by SCP-4159 swarms. Attempts by the abductees to seek refuge resulted in flight towards a central pool within the reef. 5 survivors entered the water under assumption of safety, however they were symmetrically seized and removed by SCP-5007 and 4159 specimens. All abductees were terminated. The team audio records note of a prolonged silence of 72 seconds following the event, broken only by sergeant's order to disengage, saying, "Let's just go home." Following a review of the footage presented by the body cams, the agent's reports, and the tracking data, Foundation team determined that this reef is the home and origin of SCP-5007 and has been dubbed SCP-5007-A. As such, Site 40R has been constructed 200 meters east of SCP-5007-A for the purpose of monitoring and research. SCP-5007-A is a large intertidal reef measuring approximately 1.3 square kilometers located in Central Bass Strait. It is largely composed of previously unknown variety of dark porous rock visually similar to granite, which often seeps iron oxide from an unknown source. This rock possesses an anomalous property of an extraordinarily fast rate of growth. Where non-anomalous rock generally takes millions of years to achieve any significant growth, SCP-5007-A can achieve significant growth within as little as 40 minutes. While the violent water surrounding it keeps this growth rate from expanding at SCP-5007-A, it does not impede the growth of rock over foreign objects resting upon it. As a result of this, there are numerous wrecked ships and aircraft on SCP-5007-A that have been completely drawn over by the rock. SCP-5007-A has proven to be a haven for various anomalous forms of marine life, most of its surface is host to a form of red algae that are specialized to feed upon freshly grown rock of SCP-5007-A. Numerous marine worms typical of temporary levitation, and marine spiders, with lifespans of 1 to 3 meters living below the waterline in silt retreats that construct similarly to non-anomalous marine spiders. Additionally, there have been several small fish inhabiting the rock pools and surrounding waters of SCP-5007-A that have not been discovered elsewhere. SCP-4159 migrates to SCP-5007-A between November and March, residing within the rock pools and surrounding waters. SCP-5007-A has been confirmed as the origin point for SCP-5007, which often rests here holding onto outcroppings with their tentacles while inactive. There is a large pit in the center of SCP-5007 measuring 33 meters in diameter and extending to an as yet unknown depth below the surface of the water. This pit has been dubbed SCP-5007-B. An unmanned exploration via drones has shown that it is a depth of at least 4,000 meters. Water samples collected from SCP-5007-B contain large quantities of human DNA, and an unknown biological compound possessing significant life preservative qualities. Testing has shown that organisms submerged in solution are able to survive grievous injuries for an indeterminate amount of time, even when fully submerged and unable to breathe. Exploration of one of the shipwrecks located in SCP-5007 revealed a journal found within a chest. Most of it was illegible due to water damage, but at least one passage has been proven to be in the interest of the Foundation. And it reads the following. The journal itself was recovered from the HMS Sappho, which was discovered and wrecked, almost entirely overgrown with rock by SCP-5007-A. Most of the journal is illegible save for one passage, which is assumed to be the last page, which reads the following. February 1858. Still headed east. The boys and me are still cursing Moresby for going after those Yankees, causing us to have to sail the strait. Everyone knows those stories, and sure enough the sea is in a foul temper. The waves are many yards high in all directions, and we are all forced to sail south, as so not to be capsized. Me and Fletcher both seen things beneath the waves, like large black serpents with yellow eyes. I was going to tell the crew, lest I frighten them, but Fletcher went and spatted about it. Feels as if they were whipping up these waves. There is not of we can do. More to be spied, land ahead, and the boys say that there are large balloons hanging over the island. We are all afeared, but there is naught we can do to beach ourselves and hope for rescue. Should I be told in the crash I want my mates to give this journal to my Mary? Might I know I spend my last thinking of only of her. There is then a note, which reads, the interior of the ship has many human skeletons overgrown with rock lying inside. It is estimated that a ship this size would have many more crew than those seen inside, and the location of the remaining crew is yet unknown. Frederick Valentich was a pilot engaged in a training flight over the Bass Strait on October 21st, 1978, whose disappearance to be attributed to SCP-5007. Unfortunately, transmissions to Melbourne Air Traffic Control during this event were released to the public prior to Foundation involvement. As such, Foundation web scrubbers have made efforts to discredit paranormal theories by opposing members of the UFO online community, while the official explanation for disappearance is that Valentich became disoriented and saw his own lights reflected in the water, or lights from a nearby island, while flying upside down. By the way, this is also a real event that actually happened. This guy legitimately did go missing over the ocean without pretty much any trace. Obviously not because of this, but still an interesting story. The following transcript was made at 7:06 p.m. on the October 21st, 1978, when pilot Frederick Valentich contacted Melbourne Air Traffic Control to report the presence of an instance of SCP-5007 flying in his airspace as he piloted a Cessna 182L over the Bass Strait. This transcript preceded the instance attacking and forcing an emergency landing on water. Valentich. Melbourne. This is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any science traffic below 5,000? Air Traffic Control responds with Delta Sierra Juliet. No known traffic. Valentich then says, Delta Sierra Juliet. I am. Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. Air Traffic Control then asks what aircraft it is. Valentich responds that he cannot confirm, but says it is for bright. It seems to him like landing lights. Air Traffic Control attempts to contact him one more time, and Valentich says, the aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. Then adding, it seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting the thing just orbiting on top of me. It's also got a green light and some sort of metallic. It's like all shiny on the outside. He then says his engine is rough idling. He has it set at 23 and 24, and the thing is just coughing, which means engine failure, pretty much. Air Traffic Control then asked, what are your intentions? And Valentich responds to, my intentions are Dotaine Island, Melbourne. My intentions are Dotaine Island. Melbourne, a strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It is hovering, it's not an aircraft. Air Traffic Control attempts to contact him 3 more times to no avail. At this point, the transmission was interrupted, but unidentified noise described as being metallic scraping sounds before all contact was lost. It is believed that these sounds were being made by instances of SCP-5007 attacking Valentich's aircraft, attempting to jam the propellers with its biomass. Prior to Foundation involvement, there have been numerous government and civilian searches for Valentich's wreckage, all being unsuccessful. It was only during an unmanned exploration of SCP-5007-B that the wreckage of the aircraft was found embedded in rocky walls 1,200 meters below the sea level. The plane appeared to have been crushed under tremendous pressure, and Foundation personnel operating out of Site 40R were able to recover the wreckage for analysis on October 27, 1993 with no losses. Analysis of the wreckage showed that the aircraft had suffered catastrophic engine failure due to collision with a large biological mass, forcing the aircraft to be ditched in the water, causing further damage. Analysis of the interior revealed that the presence of human remains matching Valentich's description, mixed with DNA samples not matching any known form of life, along with an aftermarket cockpit recording device. Although partially damaged, a transcript of the recording is available below. The following recording has been edited to reading where Valentich's transmission to Melbourne Air Traffic Control ended. Some portions are too damaged to produce any viable data. Rapid breathing can be heard along the sound of the plane's engine running poorly. Melbourne Air Traffic Control can be heard attempting to reach Valentit over the radio. Valentit unresponsive to air traffic control, stating only, "Get away." There is then a loud crash and the engine stalls. Valentit then claims, "It hit me. It crashed right into me and standing my propellers. I'm going down." SCP-5007 then talks and says, "You will see." Valentit to be heard screaming and panicking for 23 seconds before attempting to regain some composure. He states that he is attempting to glide as long as he can before ditching in the water, and hoping that someone will come and rescue him. There is then wind in SCP-5007, and Valentit's exertions can be heard for 2 minutes and 48 seconds until the plane impacts the water. Various electrical shorts and crashing sounds are heard upon impact. Valentit then states there's no leaks in his aircraft, and that the SCP-5007 instance fell off impact. He activated distress call, but the radio was still destroyed. The sea could be heard outside the cabin, and Valentit appears to begin to say something. He states, and I quote, "I'm sorry, Dad. You were..." Then the next portion is too damaged to be transcribed. Then a loud splash, followed by a bang, is heard. Sound from outside the plane becomes muffled, suggesting that it's been submerged fully. Valentit proceeds to panic, express distress for another 39 minutes before the plane to be heard to groan as though being crushed. There's then a shattering sound and water to be heard rushing inside the cockpit. Nothing else of note was recorded following this point. Based on crush damage to the plane, it's hypothesized that an unknown entity connected to SCP-5007-B physically pulled Valentit's aircraft at least 8,000 meters below sea level. The entity is believed to have been responsible for abductees 1 through 6 disappearance within SCP-5007-B, and to be the same described in recovered document 5007-1. Following the construction of Site 40R, a log of all SCP-5007 departures and returns has been maintained, with instances returning with abducted victims 83% less often prior to current detainment procedures. However, on April 19, 2003, Site 40R logged 3 SCP-5000 instances departing SCP-5007-A, and on April 23, 2008, recorded 36 instances returning, with only 2 not having any fresh abductees. No monitoring post has any records of missing persons, SCP-5007 sightings, or satellite data indicating the presence of these yet unaccounted for instances. This event was followed by the largest SCP-5007 instance being something happened to it, which isn't described in the article, but a large tentacle originating from SCP-5007-B. This process took 78 hours and necessitated a 26% increase on site psychological counseling. So obviously something horrible happened to it, that's so bad that it isn't described in the article. The presence of the large entity below SCP-5007-B has been suspected for some time. This is the first concrete evidence presented to the Foundation to date. This entity has been designated as SCP-5007-C. The confirmation of its existence will necessitate the main exploration of SCP-5007-B in order to determine the nature of SCP-5007-C, with Dr. Steenstrup volunteering for the mission. Attached is a SCP-5007-B main exploration video log, Expedition 38, dating to April 12, 2017. In an effort to determine the nature of both SCP-5007-B and C, it was determined that the main exploration of SCP-5007 would be necessary. Between May 19, 2008 and April 12, 2017, there have been 37 attempted expeditions, all of which resulted in failure due to hull collapse caused by intense pressure. Working collaboratively with private companies, the Foundation was able to develop a deep-sea submersible capable of diving to a maximum of 13,500 meters underwater. Following the losses of trained personnel on previous exploration attempts, it was decided that a D-class personnel will be trained in the operation of submersible and would carry out the mission. D-5007-98 was instructed to dive to the bottom of SCP-5007 and to describe significant depth readings. Cameras mounted to the exterior hull of the SCPS Nautilus and a microphone mounted within the record within what recorded all possible detail due to the nature of the water involved in the test. Remote viewing of this footage was impossible and required physical recollection of all the vessel to view. Due to extraneous and irrelevant footage removal and data corruption present in its later stage, this is not a full record of Exploration 38. Reading log. D-98 completes the pre-dive preparations and checks himself in the SCP-S Nautilus and is trained over SCP-5007-B. SCP-S Nautilus is lowered into SCP-5007-B and disconnected from the crane. Visibility is good, and black tendrils below with yellow markings can be seen lining the walls of the pit. Several SCP-5007-A3 instances are seen inhabiting a large communal web. The largest extends to a limb to touch the Nautilus before quickly withdrawing. A large SCP-5007 instance comes into view, clinging to a rocky outcropping. All of its eyes follow the Nautilus, many of which previously seen tendrils are wrapped around the specimen and inside the orifices, particularly the mouth and the nose of individuals composing the bulk of the specimen. The D-Class notes that it is holding on to an entire planet by this point, at around 528 meters. Another 16 instances are seen resting against the walls of SCP-5007-B between 528 and 1,750 meters. Eventually, all natural light has been gone with the depth of the water. A large six-tailed shark swims past the SCP-S Nautilus and proceeds to attack an SCP-5007-A3 instance. Another 119 SCP-5000 instances between 478 and 478 SCP-4159 instances are seen between 2123 and 5391 meters deep, along with 58 overgrown plane rats. These rats are often inhabited by SCP-5007-A3 instances, and there is no natural light penetrating to this depth. Numerous unmanned submersibles are seen tangled in the black tendrils growing around the walls. Some are nearly fully covered in stone. The SCP-S Nautilus passes a badly damaged human arm which appears to have been crushed, and the arm is visibly twitching. By then, the D-Class has reached around 5,800 meters. The SCP-S Nautilus passes into a brine pool and the visibility drops. The SCP-S Nautilus enters a large mass of human remains similar to the arm encountered earlier. The remains all appear to have been crushed and drained of blood, possessing intact eyes. D-Class can be heard hyperventilating as they enter this area. Each individual floating in this area is alive, attempting to move despite enormous damage to their bodies. All that all can be seen to visibly observe the SCP-S Nautilus as it passes them. At this point, the remains are attempting to grab the SCP-S Nautilus and appear to be attempting to communicate with it. Something can be heard inside the submersible as they bump against it. D-Class notes that it feels like they're trying to speak. One set of partial remains floats in front of the SCP-S Nautilus, looking directly at the camera. Later analysis confirms to be the remains of former Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt. It mouths something to the camera, unable to be deciphered by Foundation lip readers. D-Class then begins to panic even more, at a depth of around 700 meters. The SCP-S Nautilus' rate of descent begins to slow, but passes the massive human remains in clear water again. The D-Class can be heard performing common breathing exercises for about 19 minutes, before then eventually deciding to go back down again, now at a depth of around 7,208 meters. A Foundation submersible then comes into view, floating in the open water. It is visibly imploded. A large black tentacle can be seen rapidly emerging from below. It's approximately 8 meters in diameter and features numerous yellow eyes growing on it. The tentacle proceeds to wrap around the SCP-S Nautilus and begins to rapidly drag it down. D-Class can be heard panicking and expressing distress during the process. The D-Class then begins praying. By this point, the interruption begins affecting the footage after this. No audio can be heard, and there is static present in the footage. 8 more tentacles may be seen rising towards the SCPS Nautilus, and 3 of them possess large openings in their ends, which proceed to open as they approach the submersible, revealing large clusters of eyes, mouths, and human heads seemingly drafted into the tentacles. The D-Class can then be heard vomiting, followed by a muffled thump as he presumably loses consciousness. The Nautilus appears to be resting on the seafloor, with no rocky walls in sight. Black tendrils cover the seabed, and detritus in the water moves irregularly, indicating something moving off camera. A dark ship begins to approach the Nautilus. The Nautilus is now resting on a rocky shelf overhanging the drop-off. A mass of thin tentacles are emerging from within this drop-off and are holding something. Tentacles proceed to press both individuals together, crushing them by unknown means. Both individuals show signs of significant distress. The tentacles proceed to further alter both victims before thin green tentacles enter the frame above and force themselves onto the victims' abdomens, which begin to swell. The entire frame is then filled with an enormous eye ringed with tentacles, large claws, and human remains. It's estimated that it has to be at least 650 meters in diameter. The D-Class can be heard streaming for the entire duration of this portion of the footage. The Nautilus is rapidly ascending then, but the cameras are partially obscured by unknown substance. D-Class can be heard babbling and vomiting, as well as panicking. The Nautilus then finally breaches the surface, and the recovery team successfully recover the submersible. Upon the recovery of the SCPS Nautilus, it was found that the submersible was almost entirely covered in a thick organic coating, visually similar to a black slime mold, but was a host of dozens of eyes growing from it. Additionally, the submersible head itself had suffered partial crush damage, rendering the access hatches inoperable. Recovery Team 2 proceeds to transport the Nautilus to Site-40R in a temporary containment system so that D-Class and the recorders to be safely extracted. Upon their extraction from the Nautilus, D-Class immediately attempted to attack Foundation personnel and harm themselves. They showed signs of anomalous physical alteration, namely the growth of numerous eyes over the upper body and arms. The on-site security that determined that D-Class was a threat to personal safety and eventually terminated them with small arms fire. Recovery of the recording data was successfully carried out, although there's some interruption. Analysis of the onboard computer system showed that the SCPS Nautilus had been taken to a maximum depth of 17,934 meters below sea level. Due to the unknown nature of material coating within the submersible, it was determined that the Nautilus will be dismantled and incinerated along with the remains of the D-Class. Following the review of the recovered footage, it was determined that the SCP-5007-B must be sealed. Construction of a reinforced containment seal to be fitted over SCP-5007-B is now underway. Construction of the SCP-5007-B containment seal was completed on January 19, 2018, and was rapidly transported to SCP-5007, where it was fitted over SCP-5007-B via drilled anchor points on the 21st of January. Site-40R reported the operation was a success and resumed monitoring SCP-5007-A shortly after. The next day, Site-40R ceased transmitting all signals to Site-40. Upon transmitting various messages and orders to Site-40, every device within Site-40 received the following email from the account of Dr. Steenstrup, who was lost in action during an early attempt to explore SCP-5007-B. A small percentage of staff receiving this email proceed to undergo anomalous physical changes similar to those in the D-Class. Surgery was able to save 85% of the affected individuals. A site-wide network scrub was initiated and determined that MTF Gamma 6 would need to re-establish contact with Site-40R. Due to adverse weather conditions, it was not deemed safe to investigate Site-40R until February 17, 2018. Investigation of Site-40R. The following events took place on February 17, 2018, resulting in the worst losses from MTF Gamma 6 they have experienced since 1984. The footage itself was obtained from the body camera of one Captain Wallace, with 2 survivors of the expedition to Site-40R. Strenuous detail and dialogue have been removed from this log. Aboard the marine transport, footage shows approach to Site-40R. A site is seen to be heavily damaged and partially submerged, with multiple SCP-5007-A instances resting upon it as they do so on SCP-5007-A. Closer inspection of the site from the water shows that both west-facing support pillars have been buckled by a significant impact. 3 large objects can be seen resting on the top of the site. There is evidence of multiple extinguished fires. The protective netting of the site has been removed, and the transport proceeds to moor itself by the water access station. The initial examination of Site 40R's exterior begins. Massive structural damage can be seen, with 3 large objects appearing to have caused most of this damage. Closer examination of these objects shows that these to be the containment seal previously fitted over SCP-5007-B. The sections of the seal appear to have been broken apart via massive physical force. Each segment is coated with a thick organic material from which multiple large eyes were growing. This material seems to have spread across much of the exterior surface of Site 40R, and the eyes growing from it can be seen tracking task force movements. MTF enters site via Corridor 12B. An examination of the information terminal is conducted, showing that the site is running on reserve power only, with the reactor seeming to have been shut off by an automated system to avoid a meltdown. Continued search of the site shows more organic matter growing within the corridor. No on-site personnel are located, and the decision to move the site to search level 6 of the site is made. Due to the structural damage to the stairwells of the site, use of maintenance tunnels were required to reach site level 6. This led the task force directly to the main command center, where multiple staff members were located. All had numerous large yellow eyes staring across their bodies and internal organs. In some cases, individuals whose entire torso had been converged when one massive eye had adhered itself to a nearby surface were seen, whereas other individuals had faces to have been replaced with a single large eye. Further examination of level 6 was able to locate 80% of the site staff. All have been altered in the same manner as those found in the main command center. Majority of these individuals remained seated or reclined, though some stood or would move throughout the site. While the eyes drawn from these individuals were observed to track the task force, none of the staff responded or interacted with the MTF members in any way. Continuing the search, it was discovered that the stairwell and maintenance tunnels leading to site being level 7 were inaccessible. Analyzing the lower level with remote scanners showed that there were no seawater present in level 7, and that the main containment facility was several degrees warmer than the surrounding environment. The decision was made to cut through the containment facility and rappel down. Footage shows that the main containment facility is largely undamaged, save for a large breach in the floor, through which an extremely large black tentacle had entered. The tentacle was coiled around the walls of the chamber before allowing its end to hang freely in the air before us from the ceiling. Its entire surface was covered in spiraling rows of large eyes before terminating large fleshy mass resembling elements of human, cetacean, reptilian, and fish anatomy. The remaining staff members to be seen having arranged themselves into a spiral formation around the end of this tentacle, and proceeding to enter an opening at the tip in single file. These staff members have undergone similar alterations found in those in level 6 to varying degrees. The MTF successfully enters level 7 and proceeds to survey the room. Breathing apparatuses are ready in anticipation of potential flooding. At this point, one of the sergeants attempts to communicate with a less altered staff member, resulting in the task force being attacked en masse by all the affected individuals. All members of the MTF engage the affected staff with automatic weapons. On multiple occasions, it is seen that altered staff fail to die within the destruction of anomalous ocular growth is achieved. One of the privates is non-fatally wounded, and all remaining anomalously affected staff were successfully terminated. The private's injuries are treated, and several MTF members are examining the bodies of deceased when tentacle begins to violently attack the team. One of the sergeants and 3 of the privates are immediately close to the tentacle and either thrown to the walls or crushed beneath the tentacle. The rest of the MTF retreat to the security station and fire upon the tentacle. A distress call was made to Site 40, who attempts to dispatch a rescue helicopter to Site 40R. After several attempts to enter the security station, the tentacle was proceeded to enter the chamber, causing rapid flooding. The MTF was forced to equip their breathing apparatus and abandon private retreat via the breach. Upon exiting Site 40R, between 16 and 30 tentacles are believed to belong to SCP-5007-C, previously emerged from the seafloor. One of the captains can be seen instructing the remaining MTF members to proceed to submerge scaffolding into surface before following falling personally. A sergeant and private can be seen being grabbed by -C and rapidly being pulled into deep water, with tentacles not reacting to the resultant weapons fired anyway. The MTF reaches the scaffolding and proceeds to ascend towards the surface. Near the surface is a large tentacle estimated 17 meters in diameter, wrapped around the entire support column, crushing two of the privates and one of the sergeants, as well as one of the captains. Oh shit. One of them successfully reaches the surface and proceeds to Corridor 12B to await rescue. Three large tentacles are seen lifting the marine transport from the water before throwing several hundred meters out to sea, where the waves force it to be grounded upon SCP-5007-A, and no more tentacles are seen after this point. Captain complains of physical discomfort and proceeds to the women's restroom 12B and examines herself in the mirror. Clusters of yellow eyes can be seen emerging from her left shoulder, chest, and arm and cheek. The captain expresses distress and returns to the private, who is displaying similar symptoms. They are both recovered successfully by a rescue helicopter and returned to Site 40. Both the captain and private were able to be saved through extensive surgery, removing the anomalous ropes, and received commendations for their efforts. It was advised that Site 40R would be repaired and restaffed, and these repairs were completed on October 27th without incident, with observation and research of SCP-5007-A, B, and C proceeding smoothly. Site 40R has resumed the management of detaining SCP-5007, and no further sightings of -C have been reported. The final document is an analysis of recovered footage from Site 40R. Following the repair and restaffing of Site 40R, security footage was recovered from on-site servers. The footage shows required extensive reconstruction and shed a new light into the events of Incident 5007-40-R12. Following the review of this footage, it was decided that no further efforts to seal SCP-5007-B would be made. A transcript of the footage follows below. 1:45 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera B. Poor weather limits the camera's field of vision. Conditions are stormy. Visible footage shows the exterior of Site 40R. A patrol ship can be seen circling the SCP-5007-A. The vessel's searchlight is focused onto the seal over SCP-5007-B. A series of extremely loud bangs can be heard coming from SCP-5007-B. The containment seal can be heard buckling outwards. Klaxon sound and on-site security can be seen mobilizing. 1:45 hours, containment seal camera 1. All visible instances are seen to approach Site 40R. Fractures can be seen to form along the containment seal. 1:46 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera 6B. Containment seal ruptures, and 5 large tentacles presumed to belong to SCP-5007-C emerged from the breach in the containment seal, prying from it SCP-5007-A. The patrol vessel opens fire upon the tentacles, and 3 large SCP-5000 instances lift the vessel into the air before depositing it on SCP-5007-A. A tentacle emerges from -B, proceeding to seize the vessel and drag it underwater into -B. 1:46 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera 7F. Multiple instances can be seen attacking Site 40R, working cooperatively to remove the protective netting from the site. Automated security systems and on-site security personnel engaged 5007 instances, incapacitating 3 of them. 1:47 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera 6B. The tentacles emerging from 5007-B tear a section of the containment seal from its housing and then proceeds to throw it at Site 40R. Impact without a frame results in the loss of primary power to the site. Automated weaponry cease function and on-site emergency lighting and cameras activate. Alarms activate. 1:47 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera 1G. Multiple Foundation watercraft are seen departing from the site towards SCP-5007-A. Both are engaged by -C before arrival. 3 gunships were seen to be lifted into the air by large tentacles and crushed before being pulled underneath the surface. 1:47 hours, Site 40R, protective camera 7F. Instances succeed in removing the protective netting from Site 40R and proceed to attack and abduct retreating security personnel en masse. 1:47 hours, containment seal camera 1. Remaining Foundation gunships are thrown towards SCP-5007-A. Survivors seem to emerge from the wreckage and engage in multiple instances of both 5000 and 4159. 1:48 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera 6B. -C manages to remove the remaining sections of the containment seal and proceeds to throw them at Site 40R. One of these can be seen impacting the communications tower, and the site has now multiple fire burning across its exterior. Security personnel to be seen being abducted in large numbers. 1:48 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera 6B. Private David Hart can be seen attempting to hide himself from 5,007 instances before climbing to a scaffolding the site, but is knocked over into the water by stray fire. 1:48 hours, Site 40R, submerged camera 19. Private Hart is pulled to the seafloor by 5007-C, which can be seen emerging from the sand. Upon reaching the seafloor, Private Hart attempts to escape but is pulled beneath the surface, pulled beneath the sand. Multiple sea tentacles can be seen emerging from the seafloor and rapidly surfacing. 1:48 hours, containment seal camera 1. Surviving gunship crews are overwhelmed by multiple instances of 41 and 59 and are incapacitated. SCP-5007 instances can be seen returning to -A from Site 40R and throwing captured on-site security forces to SCP-5007-A from an estimated height of 20 to 35 meters. Numerous A3 instances can be seen preying on these personnel. 1:49 hours, Site 40R, exterior camera 6B. Multiple tentacles can be seen entering a frame and wrapping themselves around the site, causing significant structural damage. These tentacles can be seen entering the site via various access points. At this point, the camera's view begins to tilt as the site's support pillars buckle under the additional weight of the containment seal. 1:53 hours, Site 40R, security station 12B camera. Multiple on-site security personnel can be seen having fortified their position and aiming their weapons towards the exterior door. One of these sergeants reports contact with all security personnel open fire in the direction of the exterior door. A large tentacle featuring spiraling rows of eyes and terminating a large mouth enters the frame. It can be seen to be receiving damage from sustained fire. The tentacle's mouth opens, revealing a large yellow eye. All security personnel display extreme discomfort and pain with many dropping their weapons. Multiple large eyes can be seen beginning to grow in their bodies, with one of the sergeant's mouth noticeably being filled by one such eye and expanding to cover its entire face. The tentacle proceeds past security personnel, destroying the camera. Remaining staff can be seen fortifying the command center, with remaining security distributing weaponry among staff. Video terminals on screen show multiple -C tentacles converging upon command center. The site director can be seen attempting to barricade the door to her office, but is not back as a large tentacle enters the room. The site director hides behind her desk, but a tentacle can be seen to split open, revealing a severely mutilated Dr. Steenstrup with her side arm to no effect. The director fired multiple shots at Dr. Steenstrup with her side arm to no effect. It can be seen raising his arms and tentacles caused significant disruption to the camera feed. Director Morrison's skin can be seen emerging to pulsate and bulge. Steenstrup missed a loud wail, and at this point, all camera feeds on site begin to fail. Following the recovery of this footage, it was determined that Site 40R will be fitted with autocannons, and that no further efforts to seal SCP-5007-B will be made. Future research into the nature of SCP-5007-C can be made a priority. It must be carried out with the most non-invasive methods available.